I always say that cycling saved me. I was the most sportive kid you could imagine. I was a chubby boy. I was lost in my view, and I picked up cycling. I think just because it was the one thing I didn't have to excel at. To be picked for team sports like basketball, soccer, you name it. And I think this is also one of the main reasons that I am so passionate about trying to invest in grassroots, trying um, to welcome new youth into the sport, because my personal experience was that it was much more impactful than just being a sport.
This episode of the Smart Athlete Podcast is brought to you by Solpre. If you're active at all, whether you're running or simply out walking for the day, you've probably experienced one of the number one problems that active people have, and that's chafing. Solpre's all-new, all-natural anti-chafe balm solves that problem while feeding your skin the vital nutrients it needs to be healthy. If you'd like to stop chafing once and for all and treat your body right, go to solpri.com to check out the anti-chafe balm today. That's SOLPRI.com. Welcome to the Smart Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Funk. My guest today is a former pro cyclist and is doing a lot in the cycling realm. He's a co-founder of the Israel Cycling Academy team, founder and director of the Gino Bartali Youth Leadership School, and also has an NGO, Bartali Youth Movement. Welcome to the show, Ran Margaliot.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining me. I have to check again how many time zones across we are. It's early morning for me. I think it's early evening for you right now.
Yeah, sort of. It's like the opening of the weekend for us in Israel. It starts early. So
okay, so it's the one thing I seem to find when I talk to guests, which for you, the listener, you don't usually get to hear about this, is because I record these on Fridays. Often guests are like, great, we're done now, I can start my weekend, and I'm off into an enjoyable weekend. So hopefully it's the same for you, Ryan.
yeah, it's already a weekend feeling over here.
So obviously I want to ask you all about cycling. Before we got going, I was telling you I've got a background in running and then triathlon, and unfortunately, I have to say the part I've come back to just running. The part I don't miss is all the hours in the saddle. So,
yeah, it's really time consuming, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, just by the nature of it, like you can't shortcut it. Like you've got to put in the time, or it's just you're not gonna be good. Like you're not gonna have the legs to get it done. Even for like the distance I like to compete in was like it's like a 40K time trial. I mean, you're on the bike an hour hard, but you still got to go out for long rides and just get the mileage under your legs, and it just takes up so much time. So I guess I'll ask you, since you were a former pro, do you miss the time in the saddle? Are you still spending time in the saddle?
So I think, as to your comparison between running and swimming and all the other endurance disciplines, I think cycling is the one part which doesn't have to be a workout.
Okay.
Like in my view, I mean, it can be just sort of a get out. You can just find your peace, and sort of like a meditation. Of course, when you're racing, and you have that racer mentality. But cycling for me nowadays is nothing. I mean, it's a different ball game than what it used to be than when I race. So it's the best time of my day when I get a chance to ride.
And I guess maybe here is a potential difference. Or is it pretty scenic where you are, where you get to ride?
Depends on which time of the year. Currently, it's a little bit annoying. It's pretty warm over here in Israel these days, so
Okay.
we either ride early in the morning or in the evening. But yeah, we get to see a lot. I don't know if you've ever visited, but our country is very diverse. So within a couple of hours of driving, you can go between the desert and the mountains. So yeah, a lot to see, definitely.
Okay, and that I think for where I am in the U.S., there's just not much besides annoying traffic, and then
Where is
like,
that?
so I'm in Kansas City, so it's in Missouri and on the border of Kansas and Missouri. So like if I get out to if I get out of the city and I'm on roads where there's not much traffic, there's also not much to see. It's just it's just fields of nothing.
Yeah.
So, I definitely get that kind of like meditative sense when I'm out for a run. Um, and maybe that's just what connects with me. But yeah, with the riding, I could kind of get that way, but it just, I don't know, something about having to like check with the traffic, because our infrastructure's not set up well or comfortably to have cars and bikes on the road. Like, I definitely had times where cars would try to hit me instead of, go around. It just,
Yeah,
and that adds to the stress of it.
of course. Well, honestly, I stopped riding on the road 2 years
Okay.
ago after spending 18 years, only busy with the road cycling, road
Hmm.
racing, and highly recommend going off road. Much more enjoyable.
That makes more sense. So maybe I'll have to like go out and invest in a mountain bike. We definitely have some trails around here for that. Um, so maybe that'll be a little bit more my
Yeah,
scene.
try it out.
Got to make a note to myself to check out the trails. Sorry for everybody listening. I'm writing at the same time. Um, so yeah, I mean, you saying you spent 18 years on the roads. Is it just you start riding when you're a young kid, or like what's the pathway? Because I know, so with this kind of all comes around in a larger sense to what you're doing now, but uh, I assume you grew up in Israel. Like there, it doesn't seem like there's, prior to you guys, making this team and the development team and all that, like not a very strong pathway for like people in Israel to get into pro cycling. So like, how did you start and find your way into that scene?
So by mistake, really. I always say that cycling saved me. I was the most sportive kid you could imagine. I was a chubby boy. I was lost in my view, and I picked up cycling. I think just because it was the one thing I didn't have to excel at. To be picked for team sports like basketball, soccer, you name it. And I think this is also one of the main reasons that I am so passionate about trying to invest in grassroots, trying um, to welcome new youth into the sport, because my personal experience was that it was much more impactful than just being a sport. In my view, the sense of capability, the the different angles it opened for me, um, impacted my life as an adult, regardless of how fast I went on a bike. So yes, I did picked up mountain bike to begin with. It was more approachable, more accessible. I only started riding on the road later. At the age of 16, I won national by incident, just because the favorites were looking at each other. And when you're a road racer and you know how to have a bit of a race intelligence, you can do that. And that led me to believe, probably not for a good reason, but that I can somehow break through a path that no other Israeli have achieved before. And for the following 9 years, I tried to become the first Israeli to race the Tour de France. I did okay, but I was never talented enough. I think I was mostly a hard worker and very determined to achieve that. And at the age of 23, I quitted the sport after racing for 2 years in the World Tour, and realizing I just don't have what it takes to make it. I was very, very frustrated. Um, and I think because of this frustration, that was the main drive for me to start the next chapter, to start Israel Cycling Academy, trying to, in a way, achieve as a manager what I could not achieve as a cyclist.
It, and I don't want to like try to make you like look back on your career and go, well, what if? But so I guess a point of clarification. So like I know, if we're talking about like say 5K runners or even 10K runners, often they're going to be early to mid 20s is like the fastest guys because of the short distance. And then especially as you get into the longer stuff in triathlon, half Ironman, then those athletes are often late 20s, early 30s, sometimes mid to late 30s as like the best in the world. It's been a while. I was during the kind of the Lance era when everybody in the US was watching cycling. I was into cycling and I kind of tailed off. So I haven't, been huge. I think maybe we'll get to Froome here in a minute, but that maybe the first time that Froome won was like the last year I was really, really watching intently. Um, but is it not similar with cycling where you've got mid to late 20s kind of guys that are the best guys, or is it really the earlier ones? Because I mean, you've got obviously the maillot jaune, but then there's a white jersey too for the young riders. So it's like there's a clear distinction of there's a special case for them. So what age are we usually looking at for like the best guys in the field?
So it has changed a lot over the past 3 years, really. I mean,
Okay.
we've seen a sharp trend. It's another discussion of why it's happening, but like the average age for a Tour de France winner has really dropped in something like 10 years, you know.
Okay.
So when you see a guy like Bernal winning Tour at 22, Tadej Pogacar winning it at 21,
Mm-hmm.
guys like Remco Evenepoel winning everywhere at 19 years old, this is something that didn't happen until 2017 or 18. But yeah, I think, when it comes down to, I think the discussion, really the topic of the discussion is fulfillment of one's potential, you know, and and, and it really is a good question. How do you know that? Are you gonna make it or not? Are you good enough or not? Have you reached your
Right.
peak? And I think it comes down to mainly persistence, and your ability to persevere through all these years, and making all those sacrifices and deciding you're still going for it. This is going to be the main center of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know nowadays I have this discussion almost every week with a single parent or with a kid, who is ambitious and always feel like he's not, is in rush to make results and to achieve something. And I always try to keep them hungry, and there's this sense that, until you reach that level, you do not know how demanding that is. And one of the things you do want to happen that at the time you reach that level, that you'll be prepared emotionally, mentally, for this long years of work. And I think for myself, I was training and racing like a pro when I was 16 already, and that was not a good thing for the longevity of the sport. But that was the only
Mm-hmm.
thing I knew. I knew that if I want to make it in a place that other kids, more talented kids, in my country, even from other countries, if I want to be the one making it, I need to work harder than them. What I didn't know is that the definition of hard work is not in a single day, nor a single month, nor a single year. The definition of hard work is a lifetime, and if you want to succeed in anything, you need to be very, very patient. Being patient means that you're creating the right setting, the right surrounding that will enable you to persevere through all these years. So I think what I'm trying to say is, if the question was, if I quitted too early, there is no right or no, yes or no answer for that.
Right.
There is only, was I willing to do all this, to continue doing all these sacrifices for the small chance that I could make it? And the answer at that time was no. I arrived to a place where I knew I couldn't continue in the highest league, and I was just too spoiled to start again, start working again, up the ranks. And I think that's cool too. I think, in life, we have different dreams, and some at certain point in our life we are willing to make decisions that we were not willing to make earlier or later on.
Mhm.
And I think it's also important to know that you need to let go at some things as well. It's not
Mhm.
healthy to just always being goal driven.
Yeah. Well, and like we were talking about before we got recording. I mean, I obviously can empathize with that. I quit, so to speak, at 28, trying to become a professional, and I don't know about you, but it is difficult. Having spent all of the time and the hours in your brain just being so singularly focused. It's like, at least for me, even after the decision, it's still like there's still little fragments, little bits and pieces, like inside that just kind of bubble up from time to time. And at least, like I said, for me, I decided to focus more on, this company, and then subsequently the podcast, and that kind of thing, and seeing how else I could serve people instead of just serving my own dream. Um, but it, I don't know that I've mostly come to terms with it, or come at peace with it, but um, there's still definitely part of me that has a need to succeed, or accomplish something, or like
Of course.
do the next thing.
Yeah, I think it's very natural. I think it's very human to the need for recognition. Also, when we are persuading some people, there is always this adrenaline, this sense of purpose, which is important.
Mhm.
Eventually, we need this in life. We need this drive. It's very helpful. The sharp edge is when it becomes everything. When there's no other thing in life. And in certain points in my life, there was definitely no other view. There was nothing else that mattered in life rather than winning bike races. And it can be very, as we've just seen in the Olympic Games, with several athletes. It can be very cruel too.
Mhm. Yeah, I know when I've spoken with several Olympians over the tenure of the show, and often, I mean, with this particular show, they always have something else going on, because you don't get on the show if you're not doing something else. You can't just be an athlete. But they'll talk about how important that other thing is or was for them, especially when it was time to stop. Whether they won a medal or not, everybody comes to a place of, this is the end of my career. Earlier, later, it doesn't matter. Like, nobody, no, there's no 90-year-old Olympians competing with the 20-year-old. Like, so everybody comes to a point that they have to stop. And they often say, like, Kim Vandenberg comes to mind. She was a Olympic swimmer in 2008, and she plays the piano. Like, she played a little piano for me on the show, and she coaches kids in swimming, and is like, tries to tell them, hey, like, it's awesome you want to be an Olympian. It's awesome you want to be the best swimmer you can be. You also need to nurture other interests.
Well, I hope you are not hoping for me to play the piano.
I don't. Do you have one? Do you want to give it a go?
No, no, definitely not.
So, you'd said that you were already training as a basically as a pro at 16, or at that level of training. Um, so, I mean, you spent a number of years. Even if you're done at 23, it's what, 7 years of that, which is quite a long time for most people to think, oh, 7 years, that's not bad. But the amount of time I'm sure you spent on the saddle in that 7 years is unfathomable for most people. It it obviously takes a lot of mental fortitude. So how do you approach that with, like, your youth development? I'll call them kids or young athletes. How do you approach that with them, and try to build up that ability to have that consistency over years, like you mentioned?
So currently we have different programs that we are running, but one of the only things that I really know should happen. I mean, I think in any place in life where you try to build something meaningful is creating a format in which every single athlete, every single participant has the right to choose whether they want or doesn't want to be part of it every single day. And I think that this is very important, because whatever we do in life, when we are forced to do something, we wouldn't be able to, to reach that level. But when the times get really, really hard, we are finding this inner drive, and this is crucial. That you create the surrounding, the atmosphere for one to choose. He wants to be part of it in every single day, in every single moment of the ride. If I have a kid who is tired and depressed and want to throw the bike during a climb, then he will throw the bike. I'm not gonna be the one encouraging him to get jump on his bike, because it's his decision.
Mhm.
And he needs to decide whether or not he wants to climb back on his bike. And we all have those days. None of us is perfect. And the more you progress as an adult, you realize that this is what makes the difference. How many days a year do I have that I wanted to throw the bike, I didn't want to go out there, and work hard, that I skipped. And eventually this is where the marginal gains are, right?
Mhm.
But for me, as we seeing cycling as a more holistic, approach, not just for them to become good athletes or good students afterwards. I really hope that they can learn some life lessons through it, and decide where do they want to take it. What we try to do is try to help them think, and plan. So we always have this approach, of asking the kids. So if you've had no limitations, no one forcing you to do anything, you can imagine reality at its best. What would you want to do? What would you want to achieve? And the more in 3 years, 5 years time, next year, this year, and the more they can dream about it, the more we can help them, creating a more specific vision. And when they have this specific vision, a specific measurable vision of what do they want to achieve, and it's not an easy task. It takes a lot of time to build that kind of a vision, because first you need to be able to dream, and often we're working with youth who are coming from different backgrounds. Some of them are coming from a very, very challenging background, and and arriving to the point where they can starting to shape a desirable vision for themselves is something that takes time. But when you do that, then it's easy. Then we can do, the reverse engineering process and start helping them build the milestones as they want, as they wish they will be. It might not be the desirable vision that I would imagine, but I cannot live in their shoes either. The only thing I can serve is a good role model, trying to inspire them to do something, to create a reality which is balanced, which I believe would help them. And one of the things that I think is important in this process is not to push it. It's very easy, to encourage, especially kids nowadays, to go towards a direction that we believe will empower them immediately. How do you do that? Just you try to direct them towards places where they will get immediate response from their surroundings. So per se, through social media, through their colleagues in class. If they win bike races at the age of 15, they will feel as champions of the neighborhood, and that will be, that can be the word for them. And that one could say this should be a dream, but I always think that, our goal is to try to help them break the ice ceiling and try to think a bit longer term. And
Mhm.
if you are successful in helping themselves create shape a vision for, say, 3 years from now, you already start helping them, in gaining life skills, in working for a goal which is not immediately reachable. And
Mhm.
even whether or not they will achieve this goal almost doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is really their ability to start, you know, asking themselves what do they actually want to achieve, and not being in the other seat, the victim seat, of the one who is always following, which I believe is not useful.
Yeah, just the way you talk about it reminds me of um so each season of the show I have a question I ask every single guest. And I'll ask you this season's question here at the end of the show, but last year I was asking everybody what's the purpose of sport? And it seems like you're kind of touching on at least what it seems like your vision of the purpose of sport is.
Oh, it's very philosophical. What's the purpose of life?
Right. Well, I mean, we're bringing the scope down a little bit, just focusing on sport, but I mean, it is still pretty broad.
Yeah. I mean, what the purpose of sport for me is a place to, to discover myself at my best. I have to be fully committed in order to succeed in it. And
Mhm.
and my opportunity to discover my surrounding as well, whether it's just, you've asked me about the scenic sites, or the
Mhm.
environment, but also my companions, people I get to spend time with in cycling. We are fortunate to be able to communicate while
Mhm.
doing sports, which is very rare. You don't get to do that in swimming, probably not also so
Right.
much in high intensity running. In cycling we can still talk because there is not so much impact, so
Yeah.
it's a great way to bond.
Yeah.
um, yeah, I always say that the best friends I've met were on a bike. I met my wife on a bike, so you know that's a great opportunity to make friends.
Yeah. I have to back up a little bit, but you're talking about um, developing kids, and you're talking about how not pushing them, and it's a question of asking them, do you want to be here or not? I think about kind of the sharp contrast to, and not all coaches are this way, but I would say if I was going to generalize like American culture of coaching, it's very like loud, aggressive, like I'll motivate you for you kind of thing. It's like the complete opposite. Like you don't have to be motivated. Like the coach will, pound the motivation into you and get results. And so I think about your approach, and first, thanks for doing it. Um, because I think motivation is such an internal thing. Like you can't, you like you as a mentor or coach, I don't believe can create motivation either. Like it exists or not. You can nurture it, but also the patience that you've got to have to think about like a multi-year trajectory for young athletes, because at least in like the American pipeline, thinking about like high school, so 12, 13-year olds through 18-year olds, high school environment, it's always focused on like this season. And the same thing goes into college, where it's like this season or this week, instead of, what do we look at you over like the entire 4 years that you're with us, or whatever it is. And I just feel like that's such a mistake, to focus on all these, so like these small little snippets of time and pushing so hard all the time, instead of like taking that longer term view. So it just, I guess as a fellow athlete, I appreciate that you're taking that approach with your athletes. Because I guess I agree with you that maybe the goal is not necessarily to make every one of them a professional, but that they're going to learn life skills and a lot of other things just being on a bike.
Yeah, I think most of our decisions are based on our personal experiences, the
Mm-hmm.
good and the bad. I believe that if you really want to go philosophical, they say there are two main forces that drive every single one of us: the ego and the fear, and both of them exist in every situation we're facing. And they're gonna be influenced by that, whether or not I'm gonna push them hard or be very very laid back and let them take the lead. But I do my own experience was that every single time that I've chosen to do something, whether I succeeded or failed, I I was able to view it as something I could learn from, just because it was my decision. And every single time I was forced to do something, I always felt like a victim. I felt like I'm not in control of the situation. I cannot learn anything because I'm only trying to satisfy someone else's wills. And therefore, I feel that my role here is only to be the one enabling the experience, and whether they will choose to take it to the extreme, or they will push back and say, this is not my direction, this is their part, this is their you know um, part of the process. And I hope I can be one day, that guy that, can walk in the street and maybe occasionally see one of them, and see what a wonderful grown up they became. Hopefully, happy, and with feeling well with whatever they decide to do, and know that I played a small part in that. That's what I hope I can do. Most of the time, you're just hoping you're not making too many mistakes.
It, I ask different athletes about this from time to time. And I think it seems like at least your personal response is yes, but in general, do athletes have a responsibility to their community? It is definitely something that happens that, especially high profile athletes, whether they're deciding this on their own or they're being coached to do it just for good publicity, I don't know. But they'll, start a nonprofit or do something to give back to the community. Um, but at the same time, it's like, well, this is their athletic career, and maybe they should just be focused on their own thing. So I'd like your opinion on whether athletes in general, clearly you yourself are giving back, but do athletes in general have a responsibility to give back to their community?
Well, I think we all do. I mean, I used to think that the most powerful thing you can do in order to drive a change is to inspire people. Uh, and most of my, I call it other life, but most of my decision making, when in the part of my life when I was focused on high performance sports, which is essentially sort of a show business, was based on that we need to serve a good example. We need to inspire people. But I think, the reality is the world's problems are varied. There are many, and our ability to improve our society, the people around us, it starts with the small things. So I think, to your question, yes, they do have responsibility, but you and I have responsibility too.
Mhm.
So, it's not just because they have 1 million followers on Instagram, or something like that we should expect them, to be the only one who are driving change.
Right.
Eventually, I think that, yeah, I hope that we can associate sport with being a good human being. But really, sometimes in sports, the deciding values are different. When you're in a bike race, your number one goal is to beating your opponent. You're not going to stop to pick up trash from the road. You're just not going to do it. You're usually not going to help a friend who crashed,
Hmm.
because this is the number one value that drives you when you're winning bike races. And I'm not going to judge anyone for trying, to focus on that value, because this is the surrounding. But I think, if we are looking on a big picture, I do hope that, um, sportsmen as well can understand that people are watching them, and outside the sports arena, whatever that arena may be, that they will take more responsibility. I do not expect them to. I hope I can expect everyone around me, but honestly, the only factor I can focus is myself. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that, I don't know. It definitely comes to light right now, which is the U.S. political climate, which I certainly don't expect you to be paying attention to, because it doesn't, hopefully, doesn't affect your day to day. But there's definitely a lot of, like, you know mentality where it's like, I'm taking care of me and that's all that matters. And I feel like we're forgetting about how interconnected we are.
I like the current trend. I mean, I like what's happening, seeing athletes expressing their opinions. I think
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
the fact we are trying to, keeping sports neutral is a little bit, of trying to close our eyes. But I think saying that I expect them to do that, it's a little bit,
Right.
it's not modest. How can I expect them to do that? I don't have any responsibility for them. They
Hmm.
are adult men, they can decide their own life. I like to see that people are taking responsibility. I think it's good. Whether or
Yeah.
not I like their opinion, I think if someone is caring of his environment, his society, it's already a start. We are selfish animals. Usually, we take care of our immediate needs. That's what we
Right.
do every single day. Whenever someone else is, take care of his surround his society, it's already, for me, it's inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I do want to ask you about starting the pro cycling team, um, because at least in part, uh, starting a professional team, what seems like out of thin air, seems like a pretty big undertaking. So I'm guessing somehow like your pro career plays into like knowing the right people to help hopefully get something going instead of like you sitting at your desk going, how do I do this, and then figuring out from there. So like how does the germination of that come about?
Well, honestly, I had no clue, but I still have no clue when I'm working day to day. But when you're when you try to create something that has never been done, you just, go out there with a little bit of, with some guts, and you try because you don't want to be that guy who say, what could have happened if? And I think this is, uh, it comes down to the same approach. You aren't. I don't want to be the victim. I don't think anyone should be the victim. Think people should be proactive. Life is not easy. I come from Israel. Life is not always easy over here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a good enough excuse to be a victim. And even if, you know, um, when I was a pro athlete or wanted to be a pro athlete, there was no easy path over there. It never served as a source of, you know, agony for me, or anger. I always used it as a drive. I said, so someone needs to be the first, and it might be ego driven. Everyone has ego. Usually pro athletes, they have bigger egos, but it drove me further. And when I wanted to create the pro team, yes, I knew some people, but it came down to being, yeah, to be willing to try to fail. You know that the chances are against you. Usually the odds are against us, but we need to have that inner drive to try, because I think trying is more important than sitting at home and feeling, you know that that be fear driven, feel what could have happened if. Yeah. And I don't think it's for everyone. I think, also, not everyone has to be entrepreneur. Not everyone has to create their own reality. It's fine as well. Many people prefer what we usually say, the comfortable way. But I always feel that if you really really want something, and you feel this is something that you have a drive for, you should try to be proactive about it. I don't like to be surrounded by people who are, you know who feels like victims.
Yeah. Well, I also don't think that everybody needs to be an entrepreneur, though. I'm happy to encourage anybody that wants to be, because it's obviously not the easiest path to life. As you said, the kind of comfortable way of just like, I'll call it a normal career. And I don't mean to be like patronizing, but just there are unique challenges that come with running your own show, wearing
There
all
are.
kinds of different hats, finding different people to do the things that you need done, um, all those kind of things. And I think if you have I'll say the personality for it, but the ambition for it, that you'll find an avenue that you go, okay, let's give this a shot. And yeah, I definitely agree that there's some ego to that, because you have to have a big enough ego to go, I can do this. As
Yeah,
you
to
said, like
think
it's
you know better. Yeah.
yeah, like, oh, I could do this better, instead of as you mentioned, like being driven by fear and being fearful about like, what if it doesn't work, or oh, I'm not the right person, any of those other. We all have those fears, but I think then that somehow that ego wins out, where you take that step and you're like, okay, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, I had this conversation 2 days ago with one of our kids. He's just finished high school,
Mm-hmm.
and he's gonna do a gap year over here in Israel. He's gonna be serving as a cycling instructor in one of our youth villages programs. So he's gonna spend most of his time instructing other kids, and maybe he'll have a couple of hours very early in the morning to train. And he was presenting to me, as almost feeling like he was like he's a victim, like he was not gonna have enough time to train for himself, and what will he do next, and it's gonna ruin his life. And I asked him, so what would you like to do? What if you can choose right now, what would you like to happen? And he started coming up with all this, bunch of ideas. He might serve as a bus driver for 8 hours a day, and that will leave him enough time. And I said, well, you should go for it then, you know, and and that was probably one of the things he was not expecting or wanting to hear. He wanted me to solve his problems, but I don't think that even if I could have, and I cannot solve his problems, this would have been the right thing to do, because I think that every single time in life where we have to face life to to really find a solution, this is where the opportunity lays. Because only when we found a solution, it's usually not the ideal solution. Usually it's a series of compromises, you know only then that we are growing. And most of our lives are not ideal. And I don't think being an entrepreneur also has to be a full-time job. Usually very few people even get paid. But I think being an entrepreneur in the philosophical way, as you presented it, or what is the purpose of it,
Mhm.
is taking responsibility. I think taking responsibility in life is very important, even if your your area of creation is within you know your role as an employee per se. But once you're taking a responsibility, once you are deciding you're going to be taking action, you're not going to be sitting in the passenger seat and following, just being a victim. This is where you're growing. This is where I believe people should go.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you tomorrow you have to create that $1 billion startup that's going to change the world. Honestly, I don't wish for anyone to earn $1 billion. I think it's horrible. I think, yeah. But yeah, I think it's something you learn at sports. You as an endurance athlete, you learn it every single day. You are the
Mhm.
only one who knows how hard you pushed yourself, whether or not was it enough. Whether you could have done a little bit more. You know, um, and you continuously questioning it yourself every single day, because that's what sports is about. It's
Mhm.
about how much you are willing to give from yourself in a single moment, and usually it's never enough. Just how it is.
You always feel like there, yeah, I think there are probably very few times it in my racing career where I think there are plenty of times where I'm like I think I gave it enough, but in the back of my mind going, maybe there was something you question it. So there's very few times where I really feel like that was absolutely like there was nothing left in the tank. And I think some of that is just like it's hard to put yourself there physically where you are at a point that you simply physically cannot go any hard because there's this mental like break that once it's like you're going too hard, like you're gonna blow up. Don't like stop doing that. And getting over that is a big deal. But I don't want to get too sidetracked by myself because I want to come back to your thought on like taking responsibility and like owning kind of what you do. um I don't know what your thoughts are, or I like your thoughts, I guess. To me it seems like when I or we as people we create something or own responsibility for the creation of something, or the work that we do, be it working out or at our jobs or building a business, whatever it is, it's like the act of creation and the ability to create something and own it through your own responsibility, that that to me brings like a sense of pride and gratitude. Whereas like say like a lot of people, like people play the lottery and they want to win $1 million. Well, like my theory is, and some people would probably say like you're a jerk and stupid, but that's fine. My theory is that you will appreciate $1 million that you earn like way, way more than you would if I just handed you $1 million. Even if it's the same amount of money, it has the same amount of spending power. It can't buy you anymore. But like, even if you take the money part out of it
Well,
and
I
you
think there are
just,
a couple of researchers that have been done that many people who won the lottery, it ruined their life.
right. Well, because they don't, I think there's a lot of factors to that. Part of it is just like they don't know how to be responsible with that amount of money. Like they haven't had to go through the steps to like organic growth and the time and adjustments to earning a little bit more. And what do I do with this? And how, there's a lot that goes along with that.
Yeah,
But
so here in Israel, it's a very common topic. We are considered as the startup nation. Even the bike
mhm.
team in Israel now is called Israel Startup Nation.
Yeah, I saw
Changed its name.
the brand change.
And I think it's one of the worst things in our society currently. People really want to succeed very fast. They want to scale. They want, to to make a short effort, 3 4 years, and then we earn our chunk of money, and we
Mhm.
go party and next. But really, what people want is is not that. People want to feel well, and feeling well goes along with, as you said, organic growth, with growing step by step, with creating something which you can own. One of the worst things that can happen for a startup founder is at the moment he's selling, when he does his exit, it's no longer his creation, it's someone else.
Mhm.
And 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 usually it breaks their heart, but no one speaks about it,
Mhm.
because there's the most important thing for people in life is not money, although we think it is, but it's not money. People want to feel appreciated. People want to feel a sense of purpose. People want to be surrounded with like-minded people. People want to feel loved, you know. So if we are only focusing on what we think is considered as being successful,
Mhm.
usually those things are not gone does not go along with that. Usually when you are very, very successful, you are very lonely. You are not feeling so appreciated. You only feel people want things from you because of because of what you gain, but you don't feel like people really truly appreciate you for what you are. You don't feel like you own these things. You're only fear driven. You're afraid to lose everything you have. You feel, you can be replaced every day.
Mhm.
And and usually the way to, in my view, to avoid that is to create a pathway which is more balanced and which sees life, as more holistic, not just measuring one success as the entire game plan. That's where I think, going back to sport, I think sport can be, you know can be very, very empowering. It can also be depressing, when the only thing that matters is the podium. It's you against the others. It can be very, very depressing. Whether, what we really want is to compare ourselves to ourselves. We want to be able to show ourselves, to prove ourselves that we can improve for 1 year to another, but and really no one can stop that from doing so. It's only our decision. But I also think it's a matter of facing life and understanding that not everything is gonna be great, and maybe it's good that it's not great, because we all always need that, that missing part in the puzzle, in
Mhm.
order to have our drive, and also understand, that this is part of balance. When you're gonna excel at one thing, you're gonna suck at something else. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not gonna be an easy journey.
Rand, that actually leads me perfectly to the question I'm asking everybody this season at the end of the episode, and that question is, how do you stay motivated after failing to reach a goal?
It's a good one. Actually, I don't know. Um, yeah, I think it's surrounding me with the right people. I think that's um uh, I think the sources of motivation changes when you start, as a kid. Your sense of capability is very, very low of what you can achieve. And the more you grow, you believe in yourself more, in your capabilities. You prove to yourself you can do more. You already know that you, for example, someone like you can probably run for hours.
Mhm.
You don't know that until you do it. But then you want to run faster. Why do you want to run faster? Because you want to prove yourself and your surrounding you can do better. So the most important thing for you is not no longer just your sense of capability, it's your sense of belonging. You want to belong to those group of people, and then at certain point you reach that goal. Usually you create that surrounding, that environment that you feel part of, and then it's no longer satisfying just trying to. I mean, you already have friends. You don't need to prove every single day that they are your friends. What makes a difference later on is the third phase that most of the people are usually, in my view, are not experiencing, is the joy of giving back. You already not in a survival mode. You already have a sense of capability. You have a good surround, an environment of people that you trust, that you feel part of. Now it's your time to give back. When you give back, you feel, in my view, the highest way of of joy, when you do it authentically, when you're not doing it just out of interest. And I think that's one of the things that motivates me. I mean, it's a very selfish motivation. I feel way more fulfilled when I'm able to give back to the people around me. What you know, there are there are a lot of people with needs, and when I feel that I'm able to give to be that person for them that can help them, that this is something that drives me a lot. And it took time for me to realize that, but you know I I'm usually not very successful, honestly. So um, yeah, I think that it's also a bit of a lesson of being modest and understanding that you're gonna try really really hard, and usually it's not gonna be enough. But yeah, I'm gonna try to improve in being a good mentor, if you can call it this way.
That's a great answer. And that could get us down a whole other discussion of what is success, but we'll save that for another time, I guess. Um, Rand, if people want to see what you're up to, see what the cycling team's up to, the youth development group, all that, where can people get in touch, check out all that stuff?
So our main website currently is bartali.org.il, Bartali, Bartali.org.il. That's Bartali Youth in Movement. This is how the NGO we founded and that most of my ventures currently are at. I'm also around Margaliot at Instagram, but I don't spend so much time on social media. I should probably make more an effort over there. I'm sometimes on LinkedIn too. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Yeah. And no worries on the social media. I'm not huge on it either. And I have somebody to help with the company's social media, because it's just not my strong suit aside from getting to talk to people like you. So that's kind of my contribution. But absolutely thank you for talking with me today.
Cheers. Thank you for having me. Good luck.